They say dying is a slow fade, but for me it started with a whisper behind a cracked door. I'm Margaret Haynes, 67 years old, mother of 2, widow and survivor of 3 strokes. The last one left me with a partially paralyzed left side and a failing heart. I spend most of my time in bed or the wheelchair beside it. I rely on my son for everything meals, medication, care. Or at least I used to think I did. 2 weeks ago, on a chilly Wednesday night, I heard something I was never meant to hear. I had woken up thirsty around midnight. The house was dark, and as I reached for the glass of water by my bed, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My son Thomas was pacing outside my door phone, pressed to his ear. I held my breath. "She won't last long anyway," he whispered. "One more dose should do it. The will's ready." My blood ran cold. I clutched the blanket, heart pounding. He kept talking too low to hear everything, but the message was clear. My son, my own flesh and blood, was planning my death. Not waiting for nature to take me, helping it along. I froze, unsure whether to scream, cry, or pretend I never heard. Instead, I stayed silent. When I heard his steps walk away, I allowed myself one shuddering breath. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I tried to tell myself I misheard. Maybe it was about someone else. Maybe I imagined it. But the next morning, Thomas brought me tea. He smiled too much. His hands shook. And I remembered how my stomach had turned the day before. I hadn't eaten since lunch yet. The dinner he made left me groggy. Still, I sipped the tea. Not because I trusted him, but because I needed him to believe I still did. That whole day, I replayed the conversation in my head. Every word, every inflection. Thomas was always ambitious, always in debt. His business had failed last year. I had bailed him out twice. And the will, I had updated it after my stroke. Everything was to go to him unless I specified otherwise. And I hadn't. That night, I didn't sleep again. I stared at the ceiling and thought of James, my late husband. He had warned me once about Thomas's hunger for shortcuts. I dismissed it. I didn't want to believe it then. Now I had no choice. The next day, I asked Thomas about my old friend Linda, just a casual question. He stiffened. She was a former nurse. She knew about my medications, and she knew about Thomas's past. That's when the plan formed in my mind. If he wanted a funeral, I'd give him a dinner first, but not the kind he was expecting. The next few days, I played the role of a tired, fading woman. I smiled when Thomas checked my blood pressure. I nodded when he offered me bland soup. I even thanked him when he brought my medication, though I never swallowed it. I tucked the pills under my tongue and spat them into a napkin when he wasn't looking. I needed clarity. I needed to be sharp. I couldn't afford to be foggy-headed while planning a trap for my own son. One afternoon, I asked him if he would mind stepping out to pick up more of my heart medication. He grunted something about being busy, but then his expression shifted too quickly, and he agreed. The smile he gave me chilled my bones. He thought he'd have an opportunity soon, maybe even tonight. As soon as he left, I called Linda. Linda Blackwell had been a nurse for over 30 years. She'd helped care for my husband in his final weeks. What most people didn't know was that she had once been married to Thomas's father's brother, making her technically family. More importantly, she owed me a favor. A big one. She picked up on the second ring. "Margaret?" Her voice was cautious. "Everything all right?" "No," I whispered. "I need you. Tonight." Silence. Then what happened? I told her everything. The hallway, the tea, the bitterness, the will. Her breathing changed halfway through, sharp and shallow. "I'll be there at 7, she said. "Don't eat or drink anything he gives you. Do you understand?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That evening, Thomas returned with a new bottle of pills. He placed them on my nightstand with a peculiar tenderness, then asked if I was up for dinner in the kitchen for a change. "You've been cooped up too long," he said. I agreed, played the part. After all, dinner was now my stage. I wore the soft blue shawl James had given me before he died. I combed what little silver hair I had left. I wanted to look like a woman with dignity, not a victim. When I wheeled myself into the dining room, Thomas was already plating soup. "Minestrone," he said. "Your favorite." I smiled faintly. "You always remember." The doorbell rang. Thomas blinked. "You expecting someone?" I faked confusion. "I thought you invited someone for dinner." His brow furrowed. He walked to the door, opened it, and stopped dead. I couldn't see her from where I sat, but I knew. Linda was here. She stepped in slowly, her heels tapping softly on the tile. She looked just as I remembered, tall, poised, silver-streaked hair tied neatly behind her head. In one hand, she carried a leather folder. "Hello, Thomas," she said, voice even. "I believe we have some unfinished business. The room dropped into silence so thick I could hear the radiator clicking in the hallway. Thomas's expression faltered, his eyes darting between me and Linda. "What are you doing here?" he asked, barely masking the edge in his voice. "I'm here for dinner," she said smoothly, brushing past him. "Margaret invited me." He tried to laugh. Strange. She didn't mention anything. Linda pulled out the chair beside me and sat down without asking. "You've always had selective hearing, Thomas." He bristled. I glanced down at the bowl in front of me. The soup smelled off metallic. But I kept my expression neutral. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Not yet. Linda opened the leather folder she'd brought and laid it on the table. Inside were documents, copies of prescriptions, notes from pharmacists, logs from the home nurse that visited once a week. Her eyes locked on Thomas's. "Do you know what happens when you crush heart medication and mix it with a benzodiazepine?" she asked. Thomas blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You sedate the patient just enough that they don't ask questions. Just enough that they start skipping meals, forgetting things, until their heart gives up." She leaned forward. "But you already know that, don't you?" He stared at the folder, jaw clenched, then looked at me. "You called her after everything I've done for you." I stayed quiet, my hands trembling in my lap, not from fear, but rage. Old rage. Rage I had ignored for years. Linda turned to me gently. "Do you want to tell him, Margaret? Or should I?" My voice was weak, but steady. "You remember that time I fell down the stairs last month?" Thomas looked confused. "You tripped." "No," I interrupted. "I didn't. You left the stairlift halfway up and unplugged." He paled. Linda nodded. "We checked the house after you called. Nothing is wrong with her medication dosage, unless someone else is altering it." Thomas's eyes flared. "You don't have any proof." Linda tilted her head. "Don't we?" She reached into the folder again and pulled out a small plastic bag containing a used pill capsule half melted from heat. "Found this in the trash. Not the prescribed brand. A sedative, not even yours." He stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. "This is ridiculous." "Sit down," I said quietly. He froze. My tone had changed, no longer the fragile mother, but the woman who had once raised him with a spine of steel. "I changed my will yesterday," I said. "Linda witnessed it. You're no longer the beneficiary." His mouth fell open. "You're lying." I shook my head. "I wanted to believe you cared. I wanted to think the whispered phone call was just a nightmare. But you made your choice." His fists balled at his sides. "So what now?" Linda answered. "Now, that depends on how honest you're willing to be." He didn't move, and I realized the dinner had only just begun. Thomas stood frozen for a moment, breathing, our eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. Then slowly he lowered himself back into his chair. "All right," he muttered. "Let's talk." Linda folded her hands on the table. "Good. Let's start with the money. How much debt are you and Thomas?" He looked away. "How much?" She repeated, voice sharp. "Over 200,000, he said through clenched teeth. "Business loans, credit cards, the house. And you thought speeding up your mother's death would solve that." She asked, no mercy in her tone. I didn't mean to, he started, but I cut him off. "Yes, you did," I said. "You meant every bit of it. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." His jaw worked as if he were grinding his teeth into powder. "I was desperate. I gave up everything to take care of you." "Did you?" I said. "Or did you see a dying woman as a shortcut?" The air in the room crackled with the weight of what was finally being spoken aloud. Years of resentment, silence, and fear now spilled onto the dinner table. "I wiped you after your strokes," he snapped. "I fed you. I changed your sheets. You also made sure I was too groggy to notice what was going into my body," I shot back. "And too weak to stand without falling." Linda slid a page across the table. "This is a log of your activity on her online medical account. You adjusted her dosage twice illegally." Thomas laughed bitterly. "You were always a meddling witch, Linda." Linda raised an eyebrow. "And you were always a selfish child who thought the world owed him." He slammed his hands on the table. "I could have left. I could have put her in a home and disappeared, but I didn't." "No," I said quietly. "You stayed to watch me die, slowly, so you wouldn't feel guilty." The room went silent again. My chest ached, not just from the weight of my condition, but from grief. This was my son, my boy, the baby I once held against my chest, now poisoned by greed. "Finally," Linda said, "there's still a decision to make. We can go to the police tonight, or Margaret can make the call." He looked at me. The defiance was gone. Only fear remained. I stared at him for a long moment. "You won't touch my medication again. You won't live in this house. You will leave tonight and never contact me again." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. If you ever do, I will release every record, every document, and every message, and I will ensure you see the inside of a prison." Tears welled in his eyes, not regret loss. He stood trembling and walked out of the room. The door slammed a minute later, and still I sat at the table staring at the untouched soup. It was cold now, just like him. The house was silent again. Linda rose from the table and quietly took the bowl of soup to the sink, dumping it with care like she was handling toxic waste. She rinsed it, washed her hands, and returned to me. Her face had softened, but her eyes still burned with something fierce, justice maybe, or heartbreak. "Are you all right?" she asked. I nodded slowly, not better, but not helpless. She gave me a long look, then helped wheel me back into the living room where the old photo wall still hung wedding pictures, baby shoes framed in glass, James in uniform. One photo showed Thomas as a toddler holding my hand on the front steps. I had loved him so deeply once. Now I looked at that boy and saw a stranger who had worn my son's face. Linda sat beside me on the couch. "You know this isn't over. You've taken the first step, but there'll be fallout." "I know," I said, "but I'd rather face it standing or sitting with my eyes open." We sat in silence for a while, just listening to the wind rustling through the maple outside. It had been planted when Thomas was born. Now its roots had cracked the edge of the sidewalk. I wondered if, like him, it had grown too selfish to stay in line. Later that evening, Linda helped me sort through every bottle in the medicine cabinet. She checked the labels, the dosages, even called the pharmacy to confirm. Half of them had been tampered with. We made a list, took photos, saved everything. "I'll keep copies of these," she said, "just in case he gets stupid." "You really think he'll come back?" She hesitated. "Desperate people don't think straight, and you're still vulnerable." I nodded. "He won't get a second chance." As she packed up, I asked quietly, "Did I fail him?" "Linda," she turned. "No, you gave him more love than he ever deserved. But he's still mine," I whispered. "I raised him." "You raised a boy," she said gently. "The man he became, he chose that path." The front door was locked, triple-checked. Linda had insisted. Before she left, she gave me a hug I didn't expect. Strong, steady. "You're not alone anymore," she said. "Call me. Anytime." After she was gone, I sat by the window watching the dark wrap around my porch. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. Somewhere in the night, a dog barked. A car passed. Life continued. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't waiting to die anymore. I was choosing to live on my own terms for as long as I had. And I had just started writing a new will, not to punish, but to protect. The next morning brought an eerie stillness. No footsteps in the hallway. No clatter in the kitchen. No poisoned tea waiting by my bed. Thomas was gone for now. I called a locksmith first. By noon, every lock in the house was changed. Then, I contacted my lawyer. A new will, notarized and witnessed by Linda, was already in motion. Everything I owned, what little was left, would be split among charities and a few old friends. Thomas would receive nothing, not even the maple tree. The following days passed slowly. I expected to feel empty, devastated, but instead I felt something else freedom. It came in strange ways. In the way sunlight warmed the edge of the rug near the window. In the way my nurse Carla smiled wider when I cracked a rare joke. In the way I started sleeping deeply and peacefully, without fear of what I might eat or drink next. But I wasn't foolish enough to let my guard down. One afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name. Inside was a single page scrawled in Thomas's familiar hand. "I only wanted what was mine. You made me this way. One day you'll regret choosing her over me." No signature, no apology, no remorse. I showed the letter to Linda. She wasn't surprised. "He won't stop trying to make you the villain," she said, "because facing the truth would destroy him." I stored the letter with the rest of the evidence. That night, I called the local police and gave them everything. The pill samples, the altered prescriptions, the letter. They filed a report, said they'd keep an eye out. It was a small town, people talked, and now the right people knew. Still, I knew the law had limits, and Thomas was clever. So I started keeping a small button on my bedside table linked to my phone set to call Linda with one tap. One morning, I woke up to find a shadow outside my window, just standing there, watching. But when I blinked, it was gone. Or maybe it had never been there at all. Didn't matter, because I was no longer the hunted. I was the one who had seen the trap and climbed out. I was the one who had taken back my story, one painful chapter at a time. Some nights, I still hear echoes of Thomas's voice in the hallway of James's laugh from long ago of my younger self who believed love could fix anything. But now I know better. Love is not blind, and trust must be earned even from family. especially from family. If my story leaves you with anything, let it be this: love should never be an excuse for silence. Being old, sick, or dependent doesn't mean you are powerless. I believed that for too long until it almost cost me my life. Family can be your greatest support or your greatest danger. Don't ignore your instincts. Don't dismiss the little signs. And never be ashamed to ask for help, even if it means exposing someone you once trusted. You don't need strength in your limbs to stand up. You need clarity in your mind and the courage to speak. Your life is still yours. Protect it. Cherish it. Live it.